The stars burned cold and silent above the shattered remnants of Earth's fleet. A graveyard of twisted metal and dying lights sprawled across the void. The commander stood at the helm of the Dauntless, humanity's last ship, its hull battered and creaking from a war it wasn't built to fight alone. His hands gripped the console, knuckles white, as the holodisplay flickered with the enemy's approach. Thousands of Krenari warships, their jagged forms slicing through the dark like the claws of some relentless beast. The crew around him moved in tense silence, faces pale, breaths shallow. They knew what was coming. They'd known for weeks. Yet here they stood, a lone ember of defiance against an armada that had crushed entire systems without a flicker of hesitation. His jaw tightened as he replayed the moment it all unraveled. 3 months back, humanity had launched their grand stand. Hundreds of ships, the shining pride of the Terran coalition, sent to wrest the Orion Verge from the Krenari dominion. It was meant to be a turning point, a bold thrust to prove Earth's people wouldn't kneel to tyranny. Instead, it was a massacre. The Krenari had been ready, their trap sprung with ruthless precision. Wave after wave of human vessels crumbled, their comms a cacophony of screams and static, until only silence remained. He'd watched it all from the Dauntless, ordered to hold the rear while the admirals squandered lives on arrogance and bad intel. Now he was the last one left, carrying the weight of that failure like a stone in his chest. "Commander," a voice cut through his thoughts. Lieutenant Mara Voss, her sharp green eyes locked on the sensor readouts. "They're accelerating. ETA 30 minutes. We can't outrun them and we can't fight that many." Her tone held steady, but he caught the faint quiver beneath it, the same fear clawing at every soul on the ship. She was right. The Dauntless was a heavy cruiser, built to endure, not to flee. Its guns could tear through a Krenari frigate, but against a fleet this size? It was a whisper against a hurricane. He turned to her, forcing calm into his voice for their sake. "Then we don't run, and we don't fight like they expect. We make them bleed for every step they take." The words rang hollow even to him, but he saw a spark flare in Mara's gaze, mirrored in the crew's weary faces. They were exhausted, broken, terrified, but they were human, and humans didn't fade quietly. The truth, though, was a burden he couldn't share. Not yet. The Dauntless wasn't the last ship by accident. It was the last by design. Buried deep in its engineering deck, behind locks only he could open, lay humanity's final play, the Genesis Protocol. A weapon so monstrous, so unthinkable, the Coalition had hidden it even from their own leaders. He'd only learned of it days ago, when a dying captain's transmission broke through the noise, her voice ragged as she whispered the codes and pleaded with him to use it well. "It's not victory," she'd said, choking on her own blood. "It's survival, whatever it takes." He hadn't wanted to believe her. The Genesis Protocol wasn't a cannon or a bomb. It was a system killer, a cascade of antimatter and strange particles that could shred a star and its planets in minutes. The Krenari had driven humanity to the brink. But this was a line he wasn't sure he could cross. Billions of lives, enemy or otherwise, gone in a flash. For what? A slim hope that some shred of Earth's people might crawl out of the wreckage? The thought pressed on him, a cold, suffocating weight no battle had ever matched. "Commander!" Mara's shout yanked him back. The holodisplay blazed red as the Krenari fleet split into 3, encircling them like predators on a dying prey. "They're locking weapons. Orders?" He stared at the screen, the enemy's numbers crushing, their intent unmistakable. He felt the crew's eyes on him, waiting for a miracle he didn't have. Or did he? The Genesis Protocol throbbed in his mind, a temptation and a terror in one. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words faltered as a new signal blinked onto the display, a faint, stuttering pulse from the debris field behind them. "Survivors?" Mara asked, a thread of hope in her voice. He zoomed in, heart hammering. It wasn't a ship. It was a beacon, one of humanity's own, looping a single, chilling message. "They know! They're coming for it!" The beacon's message hung in the air like a death knell, its words looping through the Dauntless's bridge. "They know! They're coming for it!" The commander's breath caught, his mind racing to untangle the warning. Who knew? The Krenari? Someone else? And what were they coming for? The ship? The Genesis Protocol? His fingers hovered over the console, itching to demand answers from a signal that offered none. Around him, the crew froze, their eyes darting between the holo display and his face, waiting for him to make sense of the chaos closing in. "Amplify that signal," he snapped, his voice sharper than he intended. "Trace its origin, now." Mara's hands flew across her station, her brow furrowed as she wrestled with the flickering data. The Krenari fleet loomed closer on the display, their weapons hot, their formation tightening like a noose. 28 minutes until contact. 28 minutes until the Dauntless was reduced to ash and memory, unless he did something unthinkable. "It's coming from the debris field," Mara said, her voice tight. "Sector 7 Alpha, near the wreck of the Valiant, but it's degraded. Could be hours old, maybe days. No way to tell if whoever sent it is still alive." She looked up, her green eyes searching his. "What does it mean, sir? What do they know?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. The Valiant had been Admiral Corso's flagship, the spearhead of that doomed offensive. If the beacon was hers, if she'd survived long enough to send this. His stomach twisted. Corso had been one of the few who'd known about the Genesis Protocol. Not its details, but its existence. Had she cracked under pressure? Sold them out to buy time? Or had the Krenari torn it from her, piece by bloody piece? The thought of her broken body spilling humanity's last secret to those monsters made his blood run cold. "Commander, we need a call." Lieutenant Reza, the weapons officer, slammed a fist on his console, his dark eyes blazing. "They're in range in 25 minutes. We've got one ship, one shot at this. Do we fight or do we run?" His voice cracked, the strain of weeks on the edge breaking through. The crew turned as one, their fear and desperation a palpable weight pressing on the commander's shoulders. He wanted to tell them, wanted to confess the truth about the Genesis Protocol, to lay bare the choice that could end this, or end everything. But what would it do? Spark hope? Panic? Mutiny? He could see it now, Reza, young and brash, demanding they fire it off. Mara, steady but shaken, arguing for caution, the rest fracturing under the moral rot of it all. Number he'd carry this alone, until he had no choice. "Prep the main guns," he said instead, his tone flat, final. "Divert power to the forward shields. We're not running. Not yet." Reza nodded, diving into his controls. But Mara's gaze lingered, sharp and questioning. She knew him too well, saw the shadow behind his words. He turned away, focusing on the holo display as the Krenari closed in, their lead ships now visible as glints of cruel light against the black. The beacon's signal pulsed again, weaker now, cutting in and out. "They know. Coming. It." Static swallowed the rest, but the implication sank deep. If the Krenari had learned of the protocol, they weren't just here to finish a fight. They were here to claim a prize. A weapon like that in their hands would turn the galaxy to cinders, humanity just the first ember snuffed out. He clenched his fists, nails biting into his palms. He'd die before he let that happen. But how many others would he take with him? A sudden jolt rocked the ship, alarms blaring as the display flared with incoming fire. "They're testing us," Reza shouted. "Long-range plasma lances, shields holding at 80%. The Dauntless shuddered again, a low groan echoing through its frame. The Krenari weren't in full range yet, but they were toying with them, probing for weakness. 22 minutes left. "Return fire," the commander ordered, his voice steel. "Target their lead frigate. Give them something to think about." Reza grinned, a feral edge to it, and the ship's cannons roared to life, spitting defiance into the void. A distant bloom of fire marked a hit, but it was a drop in the ocean of the enemy's numbers. The crew cheered anyway, a ragged, desperate sound that tore at his heart. He stepped back, his mind churning. The beacon, the protocol, the Krenari. Pieces of a puzzle he couldn't solve. Not yet. But one thing was clear. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for time. Time to decide if humanity's last stand would be a blaze of glory, or a shadow that consumed them all. The Dauntless trembled as another salvo of Krenari plasma lances raked its shields, the bridge lights flickering under the strain. The commander stood rooted at the helm, his eyes locked on the holodisplay as the enemy fleet tightened its grip. 19 minutes until they were in full weapons range. 19 minutes until the Dauntless became a footnote in a war humanity was losing. The crew's ragged cheer from the last hit had faded, replaced by the hum of machinery and the sharp, uneven breaths of people staring death in the face. He could feel their hope fraying, thread by thread, and it clawed at him worse than the enemy fire. "Shields at 62%, Mara called out, her voice taut but controlled. "That frigate's limping, but they've got 10 more moving to flank us. We can't keep this up." She didn't look at him this time, her focus glued to her station. But he heard the unspoken question. What's the plan? He didn't have one, not one he could stomach saying aloud. The Genesis protocol loomed in his mind, a dark specter whispering promises of salvation and ruin. Every second brought him closer to that choice, and every second made it harder to breathe. "Adjust course," he said, forcing his voice steady. "Swing us toward the debris field. Use the wrecks for cover. Buy us time." Mara's hands hesitated over the controls, just for a heartbeat, before she complied. The ship groaned as it banked hard, thrusters flaring to weave through the graveyard of humanity's fallen fleet. Twisted hulls and shattered engines loomed outside the viewports, a silent testament to the cost of their defiance. The Krenari fire slackened as the Dauntless slipped behind the wreck of a destroyer, its bulk absorbing a volley meant for them. "Good call," Reza muttered, his fingers still dancing over the weapons console. "Gives us a breather, maybe a shot at their flankers." He fired again, a lance of energy spearing through the void to clip a Krenari ship. It veered off, trailing sparks, but the others pressed closer, relentless. The commander nodded, but his mind was elsewhere, locked on that fading beacon signal still pulsing from the debris. "They know. They're coming for it." The words gnawed at him, a riddle wrapped in dread. If the Krenari knew about the protocol, why hadn't they obliterated the Dauntless already? Why toy with them like this? "Commander, I've got something," Mara said suddenly, her voice sharp with urgency. "The beacon. It's not just a distress call. There's a data packet buried in the signal, encrypted with coalition codes. It's small, but I can crack it if you give me a minute." Her eyes flicked to him, bright with a mix of fear and determination. He nodded, a flicker of hope sparking in his chest despite himself. "Do it! Fast!" She bent over her console, muttering to herself as she worked, while the ship jolted again under a glancing hit. "Shields at 50%, Reza barked. "They're adapting, moving to cut us off from the field." The holodisplay confirmed it. The Krenari were shifting, their prongs curling inward to trap the Dauntless against the debris. 16 minutes left. Time was bleeding away, and with it, any chance of escape. "Got it!" Mara's shout cut through the tension. It's from the Valiant, Admiral Corso's signature, timestamps 3 days old. She paused, her face paling as she read the decrypted text. Sir, she says the Krenari intercepted a transmission about the Genesis protocol. They don't know what it does, but they know it's on this ship. They're not here to destroy us. They're here to take us alive. The words hit like a punch to the gut. Alive, not to kill, but to capture. To tear the Dauntless apart, rip the protocol from its core, and turn it against every human world left standing. The crew went still, the weight of it sinking in. Reza swore under his breath, his hands clenching into fists. So we're bait in a damn cage, he growled. What's the move, Commander? Blow them to hell or go down swinging? He didn't answer right away. His mind spun, images flashing, Corso's broken voice, the dying captain's plea, the billions of lives hanging on his next call. The Krenari wanted the protocol, but they didn't know its power. Not yet. That was his edge, thin as it was. He could activate it now, end this chase in a cataclysm that would swallow them all, enemy and ally alike. Or he could fight, delay, pray for a miracle that might never come. Commander, Mara's voice snapped him back. The display flared as a Krenari boarding craft detached from the lead ship, its trajectory locked on the Dauntless. They're coming for us, now! The hollow display pulsed with the boarding craft's approach, a sleek, predatory dart cutting through the void toward the Dauntless. The commander's heart slammed against his ribs, each beat a countdown to the moment the Krenari breached their hull. 14 minutes until the main fleet's weapons range, less if those boarders got inside. The bridge was a storm of noise now, alarms shrieking, Reza barking firing solutions, Mara shouting updates as the enemy closed in. The crew's fear was a living thing, thick and choking, but beneath it burned a stubborn human fire that refused to gutter out. "Lock down the lower decks!" the commander roared, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Reza, redirect fire. Hit that boarding craft before it latches on. Mara, get me a path through this debris. Anything to shake them off." The orders came fast, instinctive, a lifeline to keep his mind from drowning in the choice he couldn't escape. The Genesis protocol. It was there, always there, a shadow at the edge of every decision. Use it, and this ends, along with everything else. Hold back, and the Krenari might take it anyway, turning humanity's last hope into their doom. Reza's cannons thundered, bolts of light streaking toward the boarding craft. One hit, then another, scorching its hull. But the damn thing kept coming, weaving through the barrage with a grace that mocked their desperation. "It's shielded. Too tough for our guns," Reza snarled, slamming his console. "They'll be on us in 2 minutes." The Dauntless lurched as Mara pushed its thrusters to their limit, threading through the debris field's jagged maze. A wrecked frigate loomed ahead, and she swung them hard to port, the ship's frame screaming as it grazed the ruin's edge. Sparks flared outside the viewports, but the boarding craft stayed on their tail, relentless. "Shields at 40%, Mara reported, her voice fraying at the edges. "We're losing ground. They're too fast. Sir, we can't outmaneuver them forever." Her eyes met his, pleading for something, anything, to pull them out of this spiral. He saw the trust there, the belief that he could still save them, and it cut deeper than the Krenari's weapons ever could. She didn't know what he was holding back. None of them did. The boarding craft was close now, its grappling arms extending like claws. A shudder ran through the Dauntless as it fired anchoring lines, metal cables biting into the hull with a screech that echoed through the ship. "They've latched," Reza yelled, his hands flying to the secondary turrets. "I can't shake them. Breach in 30 seconds." The crew scrambled, grabbing rifles from the armory racks, their faces set in grim determination. They'd fight hand-to-hand if it came to that, but against Krenari shock troops, 7 feet of muscle and biotech, they'd be lucky to last a minute. The commander's mind raced, the beacon's warning looping through his thoughts. They know. They're coming for it. Corso's message had confirmed it. The Crenari wanted the protocol, alive and intact. They'd board, they'd kill, they'd carve through the Dauntless until they found it. Unless he stopped them. His hand hovered over the console, the access codes to the protocol burning in his memory. One command, and the engineering deck would unlock. One more, and the galaxy would burn. But the cost. God, the cost. He saw Earth's colonies, the refugee ships, the children who'd never know why the stars went dark. Could he live with that? Could he live with himself? "Sir," Mara's cry snapped him back. The holodisplay showed Crenari troops cutting through the hull, their plasma torches flaring red against the steel. "They're in. Deck 7, near the cargo bay." The ship jolted as the breach sealed behind them, the enemy now inside, stalking closer to the heart of the Dauntless. Reza grabbed a rifle, his jaw tight. "I'm heading down there. We hold them off or we die trying." He didn't wait for an order, just ran for the lift with a handful of crew trailing him, their footsteps pounding like a war drum. The commander turned to Mara, his voice low, urgent. "Get to engineering, lock it down, manual override, no exceptions. They don't get near the protocol?" She nodded, understanding flashing in her eyes, and sprinted off. Alone now on the bridge, he stared at the display, the Crenari fleet closing in, the boarders tearing through his ship. 12 minutes left. He could hear the distant clatter of gunfire, the screams of his crew as they met the enemy. This was it. The moment he'd dreaded since that dying captain's plea. His hand moved to the console, trembling, and entered the first code. The console beeped as the first code locked in, a soft chime that felt deafening in the empty bridge. The commander's hand froze above the panel, sweat beading on his brow as the weight of what came next crashed over him. One more sequence, and the Genesis protocol would wake, unleashing a fury that would erase the Crenari fleet, the Dauntless, and half this system in a blinding roar of annihilation. His chest heaved, each breath a battle against the panic clawing up his throat. He could hear the gunfire echoing through the ship, Reza and the others fighting a losing war against the Crenari borders. 10 minutes until the fleet's full range. Less until the enemy reached engineering. Time was a noose, and it was tightening. A sharp crack split the air, the comms flaring to life. "Commander, they're through Deck 7, Reza's voice rasped, punctuated by the chatter of rifles and a guttural Crenari roar. "We're falling back. Lost 3 already. They're cutting straight for engineering." The line cut out in a burst of static, leaving the commander staring at the console, the second code burning behind his eyes. He could end it now. One press and Reza's sacrifice, the crew's blood, the Crenari's hunger, all of it would vanish in a heartbeat. But so would everything else. He slammed a fist against the panel, the pain grounding him as he wrestled with the abyss staring back. The ship rocked, a deep groan shuddering through its bones as another plasma lance grazed the shields. "Shields at 28%, the automated system blared, its calm tone a cruel mockery of the chaos unfolding. He glanced at the holo display. The boarding craft had disgorged more troops, their signatures swarming Deck 6 now, one level below engineering. Mara was down there, alone, racing to lock the protocol away. If she failed, if they got to it first, he wouldn't just lose the ship. He'd lose humanity's soul to the enemy's hands. The comms crackled again, this time Mara's voice, breathless and strained. "Commander, I'm at the override. Sealing it now, but they're close. I can hear them cutting through the bulkhead. What's the plan? Tell me you've got something." Her words trembled, not with fear, but with a desperate need to believe in him. He clenched his jaw, tasting blood where he'd bitten his lip. She didn't know about the code he'd entered, the line he'd already crossed. "Hold them off," he said, his voice rough. "Whatever it takes. I'm working on it." A lie, or maybe a prayer? He wasn't sure anymore. The display flared red as the Crenari fleet shifted, their main ships slowing, letting the boarders do the dirty work. 8 minutes left. The commander's mind spun, grasping for options. Fight on, and they'd be overrun. Run, and they'd be chased to dust. The protocol was the only card left, but playing it meant betting everything, every life, every hope, on a roll of the dice he couldn't take back. He thought of the colonies, the families huddled in bunkers, waiting for a miracle. He thought of the crew, bleeding and dying for a chance he might steal away with one command. A new sound broke through, boots on the bridge deck, heavy and deliberate. He spun, hand dropping to his sidearm, but it was too late. 3 Crenari loomed in the doorway, their biotech armor glinting under the flickering lights, their eyes glowing a sickly yellow. 7 feet of muscle and menace, each step a promise of violence. The leader growled something in their jagged tongue, a translator chip spitting out broken English. "Surrender. Give us weapon. Live." His heart stopped. They'd cut through the ship faster than he'd thought, bypassing Reza, Mara, everyone. The bridge was lost. He raised his pistol, firing twice. Crack, crack, but the shots glanced off their armor, useless as spit against steel. The leader lunged, a clawed hand smashing the gun from his grip and pinning him to the console. Pain exploded in his chest, ribs creaking under the pressure, but he didn't scream. Not yet. "Weapon!" the Crenari snarled, its breath hot and rancid. "Now!" The commander's eyes flicked to the console, the first code still glowing green. One more, and it'd be over. For them, for him, for everything. His hand twitched, inches from the panel, as the sounds of battle faded below. Reza's silence, Mara's, the crew's, all gone. He stared into the Crenari's eyes, defiance burning through the fear. "You'll never have it," he spat, and lunged for the keys. The commander's fingers grazed the console, a heartbeat from the second code, when the Crenari's claw slammed down, pinning his arm with a crunch that ripped a gasp from his throat. Pain seared through him, white-hot and blinding, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. The Genesis Protocol was all that stood between the Crenari and the end of everything human. With his free hand, he clawed at the panel, smearing blood across the keys as the leader's grip tightened, its yellow eyes narrowing with fury. "No," it growled, the translator chip spitting the word like a curse. "You die first." The other 2 Crenari closed in, their weapons humming, a low, menacing drone that promised a slow end. The bridge was a tomb now, its flickering lights casting shadows over the holo display, where the fleet's countdown ticked relentlessly. 6 minutes until full range. The Dauntless shuddered under another distant hit, its shields crumbling, its hull groaning like a beast in its death throes. The commander's mind screamed with the weight of it, Reza's silence, Mara's unanswered calms, the crew's blood soaking the decks below. He'd failed them, all of them, but he wouldn't fail this. He twisted, ignoring the snap of bone in his pinned arm, and threw his weight against the Crenari leader. It barely budged, a wall of biotech and hate, but the move bought him a second, just enough to slam his palm on the console's edge, triggering an emergency override. The panel locked, the first code blinking red, inaccessible without his voice print. A small victory, a petty one, but it was something. The Crenari roared, its claw slashing across his chest, tearing through fabric and flesh. Blood sprayed, hot and coppery, and he hit the floor, vision swimming as the world tilted. "Fool!" the leader hissed, looming over him. "We take ship, we take weapon, you break for nothing." its boot pressed on his shattered arm, grinding down until a scream tore free despite his clenched teeth. The other two moved to the console, their claws tapping at the locked controls, growling in frustration. They didn't have the codes. Not yet. But they'd find a way, cut through the ship, rip out its guts, unless he stopped them here. Through the haze of pain, a sound reached him, muffled, distant, but real. Gunfire, shouts, human shouts. His heart lurched, a flicker of hope piercing the dark. "Reza!" he rasped, barely audible. The Krenari leader's head snapped up, its eyes darting to the doorway as the noise grew louder, closer. A grenade's sharp crump echoed, followed by a Krenari howl cut short. The commander's lips twitched, a grim smile breaking through the blood. Someone was still fighting. The leader barked an order, and one of the Krenari peeled off, vanishing into the corridor. The other kept hammering at the console, its claws sparking against the steel. 4 minutes left. The commander dragged himself up, leaning against the helm, every breath a knife in his ribs. His pistol lay across the room. Useless, but the override had bought time. Time for whoever was out there to reach him. Time to finish this. The bridge door exploded inward, a flash of light and heat as Reza stumbled through, his armor scorched, his rifle blazing. Behind him came 3 others, faces smeared with soot and blood, their eyes wild with the kind of rage that only survival breeds. The Krenari at the console spun, its weapon shrieking as it fired. But Reza was faster. 3 shots to its chest dropped it in a twitching heap. The leader roared, charging, and the room erupted in chaos. Gunfire, claws, screams. The commander lunged for the console, pain be damned, his good hand fumbling for the voice print mic. "Authorization, Delta 9 Alpha," he choked out, blood bubbling in his throat. The Krenari leader broke free, Reza's shots glancing off its armor, and barreled toward him. 2 minutes left. The fleet was closing, the borders were dying, and the protocol was waking. 7-2 Omega, he finished, the console flaring green as the second code accepted. A deep hum vibrated through the Dauntless, the Genesis protocol stirring in its cage. The Krenari's claw caught his shoulder, hurling him back, but it was too late. The system was online, a third command away from detonation. Reza tackled the leader, both crashing to the floor in a tangle of fury, while the surviving crew fired on the last Krenari straggler bursting through the door. The commander crawled to the helm, his vision fading, the countdown at 1 minute. "Hold them," he whispered to Reza, to himself, to the ghosts of the fallen. One more step, one more choice. The Dauntless trembled as the Genesis protocol's hum grew into a bone-deep roar, the bridge awash in the console's sickly green glow. The commander clung to the helm, blood pooling beneath him, his shattered arm useless, his chest a mess of torn flesh. 50 seconds until the Krenari fleet's full range. Reza wrestled the Krenari leader across the floor, grunting as its claws raked his armor, while the last 2 crew members fired on the straggler, their rifles spitting defiance. The air stank of ozone and death, every second a knife's edge. "Commander, do it!" Reza shouted, pinning the Krenari's arm as it snapped at his throat. His voice cracked, raw with exhaustion and rage. "End this!" The leader thrashed, its translator spitting garbled threats, but the commander barely heard. His eyes locked on the console, the third code trembling on his lips. One word, and the system would ignite, obliterating the fleet, the Dauntless, everything in a cataclysmic flash. His hand shook, hovering over the mic, the weight of billions crushing him. The straggler fell, a bullet through its skull, and the crew turned their guns on the leader. Shots rang out, but its armor held, and it hurled Reza off, lunging for the commander. He ducked, pain screaming through him, and croaked into the mic. Authorization, Epsilon 5. The Krenari's claw swiped, missing by inches, and Reza tackled it again, buying him seconds. 30 ticks left. The fleet's signatures loomed on the holo display, weapons hot, ready to finish what the boarders couldn't. Gamma 9, he finished, voice breaking. The console pulsed red, a final prompt flashing. Confirm detonation? His finger hovered over the button, vision blurring. He saw Mara's face, silent since engineering fell. The colony's children, the crew's blood, the Krenari's relentless hunger. This was it. Humanity's bold move, a gamble on ashes. He pressed down. Nothing happened. A shrill beep cut through the chaos. The system stalled, a failsafe blinking. Manual activation required in engineering. His heart sank, a guttural curse escaping him. The protocol was alive but tethered, useless without someone down there to flip the switch. Mara was gone. He was trapped. The Krenari leader broke free again, Reza's grip faltering, and it charged, eyes blazing with triumph. 10 seconds. The fleet's weapons locked. The commander met Reza's gaze, a silent apology in his eyes, and rasped, "Fight!" Reza nodded, grim, and fired point blank into the Krenari's face. It staggered, roaring, as the crew piled on, a last desperate stand. The commander slumped against the console, the countdown hitting 0. The holo display flared. Krenari fire incoming. A voice crackled through the comms, faint, alive. "Commander, it's Mara. I'm in engineering. They're dead. I can do it." His breath caught, hope and dread colliding. "Mara, wait." Too late. The Dauntless shuddered, a blinding light swallowing the bridge. The light consumed everything. Blinding, searing, a silent scream that drowned the Dauntless's bridge in white. The commander threw an arm over his eyes, his broken body braced against the console as the ship bucked like a dying animal. Mara's voice lingered in his ears, her last words, "I can do it," cut off by static and the roar of the Genesis protocol waking at her hands. The holo display was gone, fried in the surge, but he didn't need it to know what was happening. The hum had become a pulse, a heartbeat of annihilation rippling out from engineering, tearing through steel and void alike. "Reza!" he shouted, voice hoarse, but the chaos swallowed it. The Krenari leader's roar choked off mid-lunge, its massive form staggering as the floor heaved. Reza and the 2 crewmen clung to their stations, their faces pale, eyes wide with the same question he couldn't answer. Did we win, or did we lose everything? The light pulsed again, brighter, and a deep, resonant crack split the air. The sound of the Dauntless breaking apart, or the universe itself, he couldn't tell. Then, silence. A stillness so absolute it felt like death. The commander's vision cleared, spots dancing as he blinked at the wreckage of the bridge. The Krenari leader lay crumpled, its armor cracked, yellow eyes dim. Reza knelt nearby, chest heaving, blood streaking his face, while the others slumped against the walls, alive but hollowed out. The console flickered back to life, its screen fractured but functional, showing nothing. No Krenari fleet, no debris field, just a void, black and endless, stretching where stars once burned. "Mara," he whispered, dread coiling in his gut. He stumbled to the comms, ignoring the fire in his ribs, and keyed the line. "Mara, report, now," static answered, cold and final. He tried again, then again, each silence a hammer blow. She'd done it, flipped the switch in engineering, unleashed the protocol, but at what cost? He sank to his knees, the truth sinking with him. The Krenari were gone, their fleet vaporized in the cascade. But so was she. So was half the system, maybe more. "Commander," Reza rasped, dragging himself over. "The sensors, they're picking up something. Weak, but there." He pointed to the display, a faint blip pulsing at the edge of the void. The commander squinted, hope warring with exhaustion. A ship? Survivors? He keyed the scanners, hands trembling, and a signal broke through. Human, coalition-coded, broadcasting a single word. Dauntless. His breath caught. Someone was out there calling for them. "Helm's still responsive," one of the crewmen croaked, a young ensign with soot-streaked cheeks. "We can move. Barely." The commander nodded, pulling himself up, every muscle screaming. "Set course. Get us to that signal." The Dauntless groaned as its thrusters sputtered to life, limping through the emptiness left by the protocol's wrath. The void outside was a graveyard. No trace of the Crenari, no hint of the worlds they'd threatened. Just silence and that lone blip. Hours later they found it, a battered refugee ship, crammed with survivors from the Orion Verge. Faces pressed against viewports, wide-eyed, disbelieving. The comms crackled as a woman's voice came through, shaky with tears. "We saw the light, thought it was the end. You saved us." The commander closed his eyes, the words, a balm and a blade. Saved them. But not Mara. Not the crew bleeding out below. Not the billions caught in the protocol's reach. Reza clapped a hand on his shoulder, silent, steady. "We held the line," he said, voice low. "That's what matters." The commander didn't reply, staring at the void where stars once shone. Humanity's bold move had worked. Crippled the Crenari, bought time for the remnants to fight another day. But the cost was a scar on his soul, a shadow he'd carry forever. "Plot a course home," he said finally, turning from the display. "Whatever's left of it." The Dauntless limped on, a broken ship carrying broken people, its lone light flickering in the dark. The war wasn't over, but for now they'd survived. That had to be enough. The sky was bleeding red when Kale Vorsh first realized he'd made a deal with the devil. Not the horned kind from old Earth tales, mind you, but something far worse. Humanity itself. He stood on the jagged cliffs of Zera 9, a backwater planet so far from the galactic core it didn't even have a proper name until the humans showed up and started carving their messy fingerprints into its crust. The wind howled, tugging at his tattered coat, and below him the ocean churned black and furious, as if it knew what he'd done, what he'd asked for. It started 6 months ago, back when Kyle was just another nobody in the sprawl of the Outer Rim. A scavenger, a drifter, a gray-skinned Zainari with too many scars and not enough credits to keep his ship's engines humming. The humans had rolled into port like they owned it, loud, brash, and spilling out of their patched-up freighters with grins that promised trouble. Kyle hated them on sight. Everyone did. They were the galaxy's cockroaches, adaptable, relentless, and impossible to kill off no matter how many wars or plagues the universe threw at them. But they had something no one else did: numbers and guts, and a knack for turning scraps into miracles. He'd been desperate that day, though. His sister, Lyra, was dying. Some rot from a bad salvage run had crept into her lungs, and the med drones couldn't fix her without a rare isotope that cost more than Kale could scrape together in 10 lifetimes. So when the human captain, some wiry bastard named Decker with a crooked nose and a laugh like a broken engine, offered him a deal, Kyle didn't hesitate. "Save her," he'd said, voice cracking. "I don't care how. Just save her and I'll owe you one." Decker's grin had widened. "Careful what you wish for, friend. Humanity's favors come with teeth." Kale didn't care about the teeth then. He cared about Lyra's shallow breaths, the way her 6-fingered hands twitched against the cot. The humans delivered. They raided some pirate stash, cracked open a derelict station, and came back with the isotope like it was nothing. Lyra lived. Kyle wept. and Decker just clapped him on the shoulder and said, "We'll call you when we need you." 6 months later, that call came. And now here he was, on Zyra 9, staring down a nightmare he couldn't unsee. The humans had built something. Not a city, not a ship, but a machine. It sprawled across the valley below the cliffs, a grotesque tangle of metal and pulsing lights that looked alive in all the wrong ways. Towers stabbed into the sky, spitting sparks and smoke, while tendrils of wire and alloy snaked across the ground like veins. Kyle's sharp Zynery eyes picked out the details, human workers scrambling over it like ants, their shouts carrying faintly on the wind. He didn't know what it was, but he knew it was wrong. The air tasted sour, and his gut twisted with a dread he couldn't name. Decker was waiting for him at the edge of the cliff, leaning against a rusted skiff with that same damn grin. "You're late," he said, tossing Kyle a canteen of something that smelled like fuel and regret. "Thought you'd skip out on us." "What is that thing?" Kyle rasped, ignoring the canteen. His voice was rough from disuse. He hadn't spoken to anyone since Lyra recovered and told him to stop hovering. Decker's grin faltered, just for a second. "That's the favor, friend. The impossible. You're gonna help us turn it on." Kyle's blood went cold. "Turn it on? What does it do?" "Changes everything," Decker said, his eyes glinting with something manic. "We found a signal, see? Old. Older than your kind, older than mine. Buried in the bones of this rock. Took us years to dig it up, decades to build this beast. It's a gate, Kale. A gate to somewhere else." "Somewhere else?" Kale's mind reeled. The humans were insane. Everyone knew that. But this? This was beyond madness. "You don't even know where it goes?" "Nope," Decker said, popping the word like it was a joke. "But we're going anyway, and you're coming with us." Kyle took a step back, his boots crunching on loose gravel. "I didn't sign up for this. I owed you a favor, not my life." Decker's laugh was sharp and ugly. "You think you get to pick? You said save her, and we did. Now it's our turn. Humanity doesn't do half measures, Vorsh. You're in this whether you like it or not." The wind screamed louder, and down in the valley the machine groaned, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through Kyle's bones. He thought of Lyra, safe back on the rim, breathing easy because of these lunatics. He thought of running, of jumping into the Black Sea and letting it swallow him whole. But Decker's hand was on his shoulder now, firm and unyielding, steering him toward the skiff. "Time to see what we're made of," Decker said. And Kyle realized with a sick lurch that he wasn't just talking about the humans. The skiff rattled as it descended into the valley, its engines coughing like they resented the journey as much as Kale did. He gripped the edge of his seat, claws digging into the worn metal, while Decker hummed a tuneless song beside him. The human's casual swagger was infuriating. Didn't he feel the weight of this? The machine loomed larger with every shuddering drop, its jagged silhouette blotting out the crimson sky. Up close, it was worse than Kale had imagined. The air buzzed with static, and the ground trembled faintly, as if the planet itself was trying to shake off this monstrosity. They landed hard near a cluster of human workers, all sweat-streaked and shouting over the machine's relentless hum. Decker hopped out first, boots kicking up dust, and waved Kyle after him like they were old pals heading to a bar. "Come on, Vorsh. You'll want a front-row seat for this." Kyle didn't move. His eyes were locked on the machine's core. A massive, glowing orb suspended in a web of cables, pulsing like a dying star. It hurt to look at, a deep ache behind his sockets that made him want to claw his own face off. "What's powering it?" he asked, voice barely audible over the noise. Decker glanced back, his grin twitching. "You don't want to know." That was the moment Cale's dread turned to something sharper. Anger. He slid out of the skiff, stalking after Decker with fists clenched. "No more games! You dragged me here! Tell me what I'm part of!" The human stopped, turning to face him fully. For once, the grin was gone, replaced by something harder, colder. "All right then. It's a relic, Coil. Something the galaxy forgot, or tried to. We think it's a jump gate, but not the kind we're used to. Not ships, not cargo. Consciousness. Souls, maybe. Whatever you call it when you strip a mind bare and fling it somewhere else." Cale's stomach lurched. "You're experimenting with minds? And you don't even know where they'll go?" "We've got theories," Decker said, shrugging like it was nothing. "Point is, it's a chance. Humanity's been clawing at the edges of this universe for centuries. Wars, colonies, scraps. We're tired of surviving. This could be ascension, or annihilation. Either way, it's ours." "And me?" Cale snapped. "What am I here for?" Decker's eyes flicked to the orb, then back to Cale. "You're the key, friend. Zynari brains, your neural patterns, they're different. Stable where ours fry. We've lost 6 test runs already, volunteers mostly. They come back wrong or not at all. But you might actually make it." The words hit like a punch. Kyle staggered back, his breath catching in his throat. "You're insane. You want to shove me into that thing?" "Not shove," Decker said, stepping closer. "Ask. You owe us, remember? Lyra's alive because we pulled off the impossible. Now it's your turn." Kyle's mind spun. He saw Lyra's face, pale and fragile, then flushed with life again after the humans saved her. He saw the pirate stash they'd raided, the risks they'd taken. And now this. A favor wasn't supposed to be a death sentence. "You lied to me," he hissed. "You knew what you'd ask." Decker didn't flinch. "I told you it'd have teeth." Before Cale could answer, a scream cut through the air. Not human, not Zenari, but something raw and wrong. It came from the machine. The workers froze, tools clattering to the ground, and the orb's glow flared brighter, casting long, twisted shadows. Kyle's skin prickled as a voice, not a sound, but a feeling, slithered into his skull. "Help us," it whispered. "Free us." He stumbled, clutching his head. Decker grabbed his arm, steadying him. "You hear it, don't you?" the human said, excitement bleeding into his voice. "It's waking up, and it knows you're here." Kyle yanked free, his heart hammering. "What's trapped in there?" "No clue," Decker admitted. "But it's been waiting a long time, and it's pissed." The ground shuddered again, harder this time, and cracks splintered through the dirt. The workers shouted, scrambling back as the machine's tendrils twitched like living things. Kyle's instincts screamed at him to run, to get as far from this place as possible, but Decker's grip was back on his shoulder, unyielding. "We're activating it tonight," Decker said, "with or without you. But if you walk away, Lyra's debt stays unpaid. Think about that." Cale's vision blurred with rage and fear. He thought of Lyra, safe and oblivious, and the humans who'd turned her survival into a noose around his neck. He thought of that voice, pleading and furious, trapped in a machine built by madmen. And he realized, with a sick, sinking clarity, that he was already caught. Whether he stepped into the orb or not, humanity had claimed him. The sky darkened as the machine roared louder, and Kyle knew the impossible was coming for him, one way or another. The air thickened as night fell over Zera 9, the red sky swallowed by a suffocating black. The machine's hum had grown into a pulse, a heartbeat that thrummed through Cale's chest and rattled his teeth. He stood at the edge of the chaos, watching the humans swarm like insects drawn to a flame. They hauled cables, barked orders, and ignored the cracks splitting the ground beneath their feet. Decker was gone, vanished into the crowd to oversee whatever madness they were about to unleash. But his words lingered like a blade in Coil's gut. "If you walk away, Lyra's debt stays unpaid. He could still feel the voice from the orb, slithering through his thoughts. Help us. Free us. It wasn't just a plea anymore. It was a demand, sharp and insistent, clawing at the edges of his sanity. His Zainari senses, honed from years scavenging the rim's dead zones, picked up something the humans couldn't. A dissonance in the air. A wrongness that went beyond the machine's grotesque sprawl. Whatever was trapped inside wasn't just alive. It was aware. And it hated. A hand brushed his arm, startling him. He whirled, claws out, only to find a human woman staring up at him. She was small, wiry, with grease-streaked cheeks and eyes that looked too old for her face. "You're the Zenari," she said, voice low. "Decker's pet project." Kyle bristled. "I'm no one's pet," she snorted, glancing at the orb. "Could have fooled me. Name's Mara. I'm the one who keeps this heap running, or tries to. You hear it too, don't you? The screaming?" He hesitated, then nodded. "What is it?" Mara's lips thinned. "Don't know. Don't want to. But it's been getting louder since we started digging. Used to be whispers. Now it's like a damn chorus. Decker thinks it's a breakthrough. I think it's a warning." Kyle's gaze flicked to the orb, its glow now a sickly green that pulsed in time with the voice in his head. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're not one of them," she said, jerking her chin at the workers. "You're not drunk on their dreams. Maybe you'll listen when I say we should stop." "Stop?" Kyle laughed, bitter and hollow. "Decker's got me by the throat. I don't get a vote." Mara's eyes darkened. "You don't get it. None of us do. Not really. I've seen the test logs. The ones who went in before you. They didn't just die, Vorsh. They came back wrong. Talking in tongues, clawing at their own skin. One of them begged me to kill him. Said he saw the other side and it was hungry." Kyle's stomach twisted. He wanted to dismiss her, to call it human exaggeration, but the fear in her voice was real. And that voice in his head, it wasn't begging anymore. It was pushing, testing the cracks in his resolve. "You owe them nothing," it hissed. "Break it. Break them." Before he could respond, a klaxon blared, cutting through the noise. The workers scattered, clearing a path as Decker strode back into view, flanked by two burly humans in patched armor. His grin was back, wider than ever. "Showtime, Vorsh! We're firing her up!" Mara cursed under her breath and slipped away, vanishing into the shadows. Kyle didn't have time to process her warning. Decker was on him, clapping a hand on his back like they were brothers. "Come on, hero. Let's make history." The machine roared, a sound so deep it shook the ground, and the orb flared blindingly bright. Kyle felt it then, a pull, like invisible hands dragging at his mind. The voice surged, deafening now. "Free us!" it screamed, and Kyle stumbled, clutching his head as pain lanced through him. Decker laughed, oblivious. "That's it. You're sinking. Get him in there." The armored humans grabbed Kyle, dragging him toward a platform rigged with wires and restraints. He thrashed, claws raking at their suits, but they were stronger, fueled by that reckless human fire. The platform rose, lifting him toward the orb, and the world blurred as the voice drowned out everything else. "You can stop this," it whispered, softer now, insidious. "You can end them." Kyle's vision swam, and he saw Lyra's face, alive, smiling, then Decker's grin, smug and triumphant. The orb loomed closer, its light searing his skin, and he realized with a sick jolt that he wasn't just a key. He was a sacrifice. And the thing inside knew it too. The platform jolted to a stop, suspending Kale inches from the orb's pulsing surface. Its light burned through his closed eyelids, a sickly green that clawed at his senses. The voice was everywhere now, inside his skull, his veins, his bones, screaming, "Free us!" with a fury that made his blood run cold. The restraints bit into his wrists as he thrashed, but the humans below didn't care. Decker's voice crackled through a calm, sharp and gleeful. "Hold steady, Vorsh. You're about to be a legend." Kyle's claws scraped uselessly against the metal. He wasn't a legend. He was prey. The orb's pull grew stronger, a tidal force yanking at his mind, and he felt himself fraying, threads of thought unraveling into the void. Memories flashed. Lyra's laugh. The rim's dust-choked skies. The day he'd begged the humans for help. He'd traded her life for this, and now they'd turned his debt into a death sentence. Down below, the machine groaned, tendrils twitching as sparks rained from its towers. The workers cheered, oblivious to the cracks widening in the earth. Kyle's sharp Zainari eyes caught Mara in the chaos, her face pale as she wrestled with a control panel, muttering curses. She'd warned him, but it was too late. The voice surged again, softer now, cunning. "They betray you. Break them." He froze. The words weren't just noise. They were a choice. His rage flared hot and jagged at Decker, at humanity, at the trap he'd walked into. The orb pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, and for a moment he saw it. A vision of the machine collapsing, the humans screaming, the valley swallowed in fire. It could happen. He could make it happen. "Vorsh!" Decker's shout snapped him back. "We're at threshold. You're in." The platform lurched, and the orb's surface rippled like liquid, inches from his face. Kyle's scream caught in his throat as the light swallowed him whole. Pain exploded, sharp, infinite. Then silence. He was nowhere, floating in a black expanse, weightless and alone. No, not alone. Shapes moved in the dark, vague, writhing forms that whispered in 1,000 voices. "You're here," they said. "You're ours." Panic clawed at him, but his body wouldn't respond. He was a mind without a shell, trapped with whatever this machine had caged. The shapes drew closer, their whispers turning to shrieks, and Cale felt them probing, peeling at his thoughts. "Help us," they begged. "End them." He saw Lyra again, safe and alive, and Decker's grin, smug and cruel. The humans had used him, but these things, they wanted more. They wanted out, and he was the door. A jolt ripped through him, and suddenly he was back, gasping on the platform, the orb still blazing. Decker's voice crackled. "It worked! He's linked!" Kyle's hands shook as the restraints loosened. The voices lingered, watching, waiting. Kyle's hands trembled as the restraints fell away, clattering against the platform with a hollow clang. The orb loomed above him, its glow dimmer now, but still alive. Watching. His breath came in ragged gasps, each one tasting of ash and static, and his skin prickled with the memory of that black expanse. The voices hadn't left him. They coiled in his mind like smoke, whispering, pleading, threatening. "You're ours. Free us. End them." He pressed his palms to his temples, trying to force them out, but they clung tighter, their presence a weight he couldn't shake. Below, the valley was a storm of noise and motion. The machine's pulse had steadied, a low thrum that vibrated through the cracked earth, and the humans were shouting, laughing, slapping each other's backs like they'd conquered the stars. Decker's voice boomed over the comm again, sharp and triumphant. "We've got a signal. It's stabilizing. Vorsh, you beautiful bastard, you did it." Kyle didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a wound, raw and bleeding, his mind split between the here and now and that endless dark where the voices lived. His claws flexed, itching to tear into something. Decker, the machine, himself, anything to stop the chaos clawing at him. He staggered to his feet, legs unsteady, and peered over the platform's edge. The workers swarmed below, their faces lit with a manic glee that turned his stomach. They didn't see it. The way the tendrils twitched, the way the air shimmered with something unseen. They didn't hear the voices, but Mara did. He spotted her near the control rig, her hands frozen on the levers, her eyes locked on him. She'd felt it too, the wrongness, the hunger. Their gazes met, and for a moment he saw it. Fear, yes, but also a flicker of defiance. She shook her head, a tiny, desperate motion, and mouthed one word. Stop. The platform began to lower, creaking as it descended toward the chaos. Kyle's heart pounded, each beat a hammer against his ribs. The voices surged, louder now, a chorus of rage and despair. They used you. They'll use us. Break them. He stumbled, catching himself on the railing, and the vision flashed again. The machine in ruins, the valley aflame, the humans screaming. It wasn't just a threat. It was a promise. Decker was waiting when the platform hit the ground, his grin wide enough to split his face. You're a miracle, Vorsh. We're reading energy spikes off the charts. Whatever's on the other side, it's waking up. He clapped Coyle's shoulder, oblivious to the way Coyle flinched, the way his claws twitched toward the human's throat. What's on the other side? Coyle rasped, voice rough as gravel. You don't even know. Decker laughed, a sound that grated like broken glass. That's the fun of it. Could be gods, could be monsters, could be nothing, but it's ours now, humanity's ticket to the big leagues. Kyle's gut twisted. He saw Lyra's face again, alive because of these madmen, and felt the debt like chains. But the voices pressed harder, their whispers turning to snarls. They'll destroy everything. You can save her. Break it. He glanced at Mara, still at the controls, her hands trembling now. She caught his eye again, and this time she nodded, just once, sharp and certain. She'd do it. She'd shut it down. But the machine was alive, its tendrils curling toward the orb like fingers, and Coyle knew it wouldn't let go easily. Decker turned away, barking orders, and Coyle's hand hovered over the platform's edge. The voices roared, a tidal wave crashing through him. Now, they screamed, and he felt it. The power, the choice. He could end this. He could rip the machine apart, let the voices loose and watch humanity burn, or he could fight them, hold the line, and pray the humans were right. The ground shook, a deep rumble that sent workers stumbling. The orb flared, bright and furious, and Cale's vision blurred as the voices clawed deeper. Free us! They howled, and he saw it again. Lyra, safe, then gone, swallowed by the fire he could unleash. Mara's voice cut through, faint but fierce. Vorsh, now! His claws dug into the metal, tearing grooves. He had seconds, maybe less. The metal groaned under Kyle's claws as he stood frozen, the world narrowing to the scream of the voices and the shuddering earth. Free us! They roared, a storm of fury and desperation that drowned out everything else. His vision flickered. Lyra's smile, Decker's grin, the valley in flames, and his body trembled with the weight of it. Mara's shout still echoed in his ears, sharp and urgent. Now, she was at the controls, her hands slamming levers, her face a mask of grim resolve. But the machine wasn't yielding. Its tendrils lashed out, snaking toward her, and the orb pulsed with a light so fierce it burned shadows into the dirt. Kyle's breath hitched. He could feel the voices' hunger, their rage, pressing against his skull like a vice. They weren't just trapped. They were starving, and he was their way out. His claws twitched, itching to tear into the platform, the orb, anything to silence them. But then he saw her, Mara, dodging a tendril as it smashed into the control rig, sparks flying. She wasn't like Decker. She wasn't drunk on humanity's reckless dreams. She was fighting to stop this, and she needed him. The ground bucked again, harder, and a crack split the valley floor, swallowing a worker whole. Screams erupted, the humans' triumph turning to panic as the machine writhed like a living thing. Decker's voice cut through the chaos, furious now. "Vorsh, get back up there! We're losing it!" Kyle's head snapped toward him. Decker stood at the base of a tower, waving wildly, his grin replaced by a snarl. The human didn't see it. The way the orb's light pulsed in time with the voices, the way the air thickened with something ancient and vengeful. He didn't care. To him, Kyle was just a tool, a debt to be cashed in. The voices seized the moment, their whispers turning to a command. "Break it!" they thundered, and Cale's hands moved before he could think, claws slashing at the platform's wiring. Sparks flew, and the machine shrieked, a sound that wasn't metal or tech, but something alive, wounded. The orb dimmed, just for a second, and the voices howled in triumph. "Yes, more!" But then he stopped. His claws hovered, trembling, as Lyra's face flashed again, alive, safe, because of these humans. If he broke it, if he let the voices out, what would happen to her? To the rim? To everything? Mara's cry snapped him back. A tendril had her pinned, coiling around her leg, dragging her toward the orb. She clawed at the ground, her tools scattered, her defiance crumbling into terror. "Vorsh!" she screamed, and the sound cut deeper than the voices ever could. Kyle moved. He leapt from the platform, hitting the ground hard, and charged toward her. The tendrils lashed out, but his Zenari reflexes were sharper, honed by years of survival. He slashed at the metal, severing the coil around Mara's leg, and hauled her free. She gasped, clutching his arm, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and gratitude. "It's not stopping," she rasped, pointing at the orb. "We're too late." The light flared again, brighter, and the voices surged, no longer pleading but commanding. "You can't hold us!" they roared, and Kyle felt it. A shift, a tearing in his mind. The orb cracked, a hairline fracture spidering across its surface, and the air split with a sound like 1,000 breaking bones. Decker was on them in an instant, shoving through the chaos. "What did you do?" he bellowed, grabbing Kyle's coat. "You're ruining it!" Kyle shoved him back, claws bared. "You ruined it! You don't even know what you've woken!" The human's face twisted, rage and desperation warring in his eyes. "We're so close. You owe us this." "I owe you nothing," Kale snarled, and for the first time, he believed it. The machine screamed again, louder, and the crack in the orb widened. Something moved inside, dark, vast, and alive. The voices laughed, a sound that chilled Kale's blood. "Too late," they whispered, and the ground began to collapse. The valley was dying. The ground split wider, jagged fissures swallowing dirt and metal as the machine convulsed like a beast in its death throes. The orb's crack yawned open, spilling a darkness that wasn't just shadow. It moved, pulsed, reached. The voices weren't whispers anymore. They were a cacophony, a tidal wave of glee and malice that crashed through Kyle's mind. "Free! Free at last!" They shrieked, and he stumbled, clutching his head as the sound threatened to split him apart. Mara clung to his arm, her breath ragged, her leg bleeding where the tendril had crushed it. "We have to run!" she gasped, pulling at him. "It's over!" But Kale couldn't move. His eyes were locked on the orb, on the thing emerging from it. Formless yet alive, a writhing mass of intent that sucked the light from the air. The humans scattered. Their cheers turned to wails as the tendrils lashed out blindly, smashing bodies and machinery alike. Decker stood his ground, though, screaming into a calm, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. "Hold the line! We can still control it!" Control it? Kale's laugh was bitter, choked. The humans had never controlled this. They'd poked a sleeping god and called it progress. And he'd been their key, their pawn, dragged into this nightmare because of a favor he couldn't repay. The voices seized his rage, twisting it. They did this. End them. He saw it again. The valley in flames, Decker's smug grin erased, humanity's arrogance reduced to ash, his claws flexed, and for a heartbeat he wanted it, wanted them gone. But then Mara's grip tightened, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Vorsh, don't! You're not them!" Her words hit like a slap, and he blinked, the vision fading. She was right. He wasn't human. He wasn't reckless, wasn't blind. He was Zainari, a survivor, and he wouldn't let these voices turn him into their weapon. Not for revenge. Not for anything. The orb shattered fully then, a deafening crack that sent shards flying. The darkness poured out, coalescing into shapes, vague, towering figures that loomed over the valley. The air grew heavy, suffocating, and the voices roared in triumph. "We are here," they bellowed, and Kyle felt their gaze, cold, endless, and ravenous, fix on him. Decker charged forward, shoving past fleeing workers, a plasma torch in hand. "Vorsh, get back to the platform, we can seal it!" His eyes were wild, desperate, clinging to a dream that was already dead. Kyle shoved Mara behind him, facing Decker. "It's done, you fool! You've killed us all!" "Not yet!" Decker snarled, lunging at him. Kyle sidestepped, claws slashing, and Decker hit the ground hard, blood welling from his arm. He didn't stay down, though. Humans never did. He staggered up, torch flaring, and swung again. The dark shapes moved closer, their presence a pressure that crushed the breath from Kyle's lungs. The machine's towers buckled, collapsing in showers of sparks, and the ground heaved, throwing them both off balance. Mara screamed as a fissure opened beneath her, and Kyle dove, grabbing her wrist just as she slipped over the edge. Her weight yanked at him, his claws scrabbling for purchase on the crumbling dirt. "Hold on!" he shouted, his voice raw. Her eyes met his, wide and terrified, but she nodded, clinging to him with all she had. Decker loomed over them, torch raised. "You're wasting time, we can still—" A tendril struck, fast and brutal, piercing Decker's chest. His words cut off in a gurgle, his body jerking as the metal coiled and yanked him into the air. Kyle stared, frozen, as the human's torch fell, sizzling in the dust. Decker's eyes locked on his, pleading for a moment, then went dark. The voices laughed, a sound that shook the sky. "One down," they purred. "More to come." Kyle hauled Mara up, his arms burning, and they stumbled back as the dark shapes descended, their forms sharpening. Claws, eyes, hunger made real. The valley was lost, and Kale knew with a sick certainty that this was only the beginning. The valley was a graveyard now, a jagged wound in Zyra 9's crust where the machine had once stood. Its towers were rubble, its tendrils limp and lifeless, but the air still thrummed with the presence of the things that had broken free. They towered over the wreckage, dark, shifting figures with claws like blades, and eyes that burned with a cold, endless hunger. The voices weren't in Kyle's head anymore. They were everywhere, a chorus of triumph and malice that echoed off the cliffs. "We are here," they sang, and the ground trembled with their steps. Kyle dragged Mara through the chaos, his claws digging into her arm as he pulled her over shattered metal and broken earth. Her leg dragged uselessly, blood soaking her pant leg, but she didn't complain, just gritted her teeth and kept moving. The humans who'd survived were fleeing, their bravado shattered, their shouts swallowed by the wind. Decker's body lay somewhere behind them, a crumpled testament to humanity's hubris, and Kale felt no pity. The bastard had gambled with the galaxy and lost. But the victory wasn't Kale's either. The things, the entities, were loose, and they weren't stopping. He could feel their gaze, heavy and predatory, tracking him as he stumbled toward the cliffs. Mara's breath came in shallow gasps, her strength fading, and Kyle's own body screamed with exhaustion. His Zenari endurance was all that kept him upright, but even that was fraying. "We can't outrun them," Mara rasped, her voice barely audible over the entity's low, guttural hum. She pointed with a trembling hand toward the skiff, half buried under debris near the valley's edge. "There, if it still works." Kyle didn't waste breath replying. He hauled her toward it, shoving aside twisted metal with a strength born of desperation. The entities moved closer, their forms solidifying, hulking insect-like shapes with too many limbs and mouths that gaped like wounds. The air grew colder, the light dimmer, as if they devoured everything they touched. The skiff's hatch was dented but intact. Kyle pried it open, his claws screeching against the steel, and shoved Mara inside. She collapsed onto the floor, clutching her leg, while he scrambled to the controls. The console flickered, sparking under his hands, and for a moment he thought it was dead. Then the engines coughed. A weak, stuttering roar, and the skiff lurched upward. The entities lunged, claws raking the hull, and Coyle slammed the throttle. The skiff shot forward, weaving through the valley as the things pursued, their hum rising to a shriek. Mara dragged herself to a seat, her face pale but fierce. "Head for the cliffs," she said. "There's a relay station. Might get a signal out." Kyle nodded, his jaw tight. The skiff rattled, its frame groaning under the strain, but it held. The cliffs loomed ahead, stark against the black sky, and he aimed for a narrow ledge where a rusted antenna jutted out. The entities were gaining, their claws slashing the air, and Cale felt their hunger, a void that wanted to swallow him whole. The skiff hit the ledge hard, skidding to a stop. Kyle leapt out, dragging Mara with him, and stumbled to the relay. It was ancient, half-fried, but its lights blinked faintly. Mara crawled to it, her hands shaking as she punched in a distress code. "Rim's close enough," she muttered. "Someone'll hear." The entities reached the base of the cliffs, their forms towering, unstoppable. Kyle turned to face them, claws bared, knowing it was futile. But then the relay beeped, a sharp, clear sound, and a voice crackled through. "Zenari, not human." "This is Outpost 7. Identify." "Lyra," Kyle whispered, his heart lurching. He grabbed the comm. "Kyle Vorsh, Zenari. 09's gone. Entities loose. Send everything you've got." The line hissed, then, "Hold on." "Fleet's en route." The entities climbed, their claws gouging the rock, and Cale pulled Mara back, shielding her. The skiff was trashed, the valley lost, but the signal was out. Lyra would live. The Rim might stand a chance. The first entity crested the ledge, its eyes locking on Kyle, and the voices spoke one last time, not in his head but aloud, a promise that chilled his blood. "This is not the end." He braced himself, claws ready, as the sky lit up with the distant glow of ships. Humanity had opened the door, but Cale would fight to close it, or die trying.